Hello everyone, and welcome to this Thales and Google Cloud ISV showcase. Our focus today is on the area of digital sovereignty and taking charge of your data, particularly your sensitive data in the cloud. My name is Rob Ellis, and I look after the EMEA business at Thales CPL.
And hello everyone, my name is Tim Phipps and I look after the Google Cloud partnership for Thales across the EMEA region.
So first of all, let's take a quick look through the agenda for today's discussion. To get us started, I'll give a very brief overview of the Thales company and where our business line fits in. Then we'll get straight into the main topic of today's presentation, which is digital sovereignty. What is it and why is it important? Then we'll look into how organizations can define an appropriate approach to digital sovereignty based on the varying degrees of risk that they're faced with. As you may have guessed, Thales, in partnership with Google, are delivering solutions to take care of the regulatory and sovereignty concerns associated with the journey to the cloud. And Tim will provide a high-level overview of this, together with some recent customer use cases, illustrating a number of possible approaches customers have taken. Finally, we'll recap the key takeaways, and we hope this will help you to navigate your cloud migration as it pertains to sensitive workloads. So a quick look at the Thales Group. We're a large global business that provides services and solutions in various sectors, including security, aerospace, defense, and critical infrastructure. We in CPL, which is Cloud Protection and Licensing, operate in a business unit that helps over 30,000 organizations in regulated industries to protect their sensitive data, both on-premise and in the cloud. Our HQ is in France, which we've found to be quite an advantage for European organizations as we operate under the same data privacy regulations and requirements that many of you do. Now, we're all aware of the rapid migration of workloads to the cloud in recent times. Organizations can indeed move rapidly to the cloud. But if you want to ensure a successful journey, which enables you to reap the benefits of the cloud whilst taking care of the critical considerations around sensitive workloads and data privacy regulations, then you should make sure that you take digital sovereignty into your cloud migration strategy from the very outset. With this in mind, Google Cloud and Thales can help you overcome data privacy and compliance barriers and accelerate your journey to the cloud. So, what exactly do we mean by digital sovereignty? Well, there are three pillars to digital sovereignty. First, we have data sovereignty, essentially the ability to ensure that sensitive data doesn't fall into the hands of a foreign state without your permission. Then we have operational sovereignty, which enables you to ensure that bad actors or malicious processors can't access, or equally importantly, prevent you from accessing your valuable data. And thirdly, we have software sovereignty. This grants you the ability to store and run your workloads wherever you want, so that you can maximize both choice and resilience. And why is all of this important? Well, put simply, organizations who take charge of their digital sovereignty will find it easier to migrate sensitive workloads to the cloud. So, as the title suggests, the crux of digital sovereignty lies in the management of keys. It's been well known for centuries, that the most effective way to protect sensitive data is to encrypt it. And the foundation of digital sovereignty is to assume control of your data by owning and controlling your own encryption keys within your organization, rather than relying on the native key stores managed outside of your organization, for example by a cloud service provider. Both Thales and Google Cloud encourage you to own your own keys, so that you can build privacy by design into your architecture and create a long-term sustainable cloud transformation. So let's take another quick look at those three pillars of digital sovereignty in a little more detail. As data privacy regulations become more prevalent, we're hearing more and more about data sovereignty. This is a means of helping organizations to comply with data privacy laws such as GDPR and the implications of the Schrems II ruling, which attempts to ensure the privacy of EU citizens' data beyond the borders of the EU. For instance, data can help mitigate against the threat of a foreign state issue a subpoena in an attempt to access private data in the clear. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that sensitive workloads can't be moved to the cloud. In many instances, it's still possible to move sensitive data to the cloud, providing the encryption keys are always held and controlled by the customer. So in this scenario, the keys are held on-prem at the customer's main data center, but access to a sensitive workload is requested from one of their operation centers in France. As this is a valid request, access to the key is granted, and the data in the GCP data center in Germany can be read in the clear. In this second scenario, access to a sensitive workload is requested from a foreign government. As this is an invalid request, access to the key is denied, and the data remains protected in GCP. We'll move on now to operational sovereignty, which ensures that only authorized users or processors with a valid reason and permission may access your sensitive workload. Together, Google and Thales help organizations mitigate against the risks of data breaches and data loss by enabling them to exercise full, independent control over where their sensitive data is located, how it's encrypted, where their encryption keys are stored and managed, and most importantly, who can access the keys and applications. Unless a valid reason to access the data is provided, sensitive data stored in the cloud will not be accessible in clear to unauthorized users, which could include CSP employees such as support engineers, privileged users such as DB admins or sysadmins, or potentially malicious processors. The highly publicized threat of ransomware typically involves malware stealing privileged user credentials and then encrypting key files so that the organization can no longer function. By encrypting these files and controlling access to them before they're stored, either on-prem or in the cloud, you can help mitigate against the ransomware threat. And the third and final component of digital sovereignty is software sovereignty. Be it for commercial, technical, or compliance reasons, organizations are increasingly adding hybrid multi-cloud. The idea is to avoid an over-reliance on a single cloud service provider and to retain the ability to run workloads wherever they're needed. As you add more workloads across more clouds, you can end up with thousands of different key stores associated with different applications and workloads that have to be managed manually using different processor interfaces. As we've heard from Gartner recently, human error in managing multiple disparate key stores can be one of the most common factors and one of the most common sources of security holes. To help solve this issue, Thales can help to streamline the task of external key management by consolidating keys and management into a single converged system, which is managed through a centralized console and viewed through a single pane of glass. This increases operational efficiency through harmonization and automation, and hence reduces operational costs. It also reduces the risk of errors and data breaches, thereby improving your security posture. And very importantly, it increases the portability of workloads between on-premise and various different cloud platforms. So in terms of trends, we're already seeing increasing numbers of customers using external key management to help them move their sensitive workloads to the cloud. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. A recent report by Gartner predicts that there will be a 400% increase in the use of external key management to protect sensitive data in multi-cloud environments over the next 3 years. And we're seeing this at Thales. We're receiving an increasing number of inquiries, RFPs, etc. from organizations looking for ways to achieve external key management through a single pane of glass. And we've developed and are delivering a comprehensive solution which helps our customers to achieve precisely this, which Tim will now tell us a little more about.
So thanks for that, Rob. So I think a key question to ask is, what type of key management strategy should you use if you want to control your digital sovereignty? And the answer is, it really depends. It depends on how much and the nature of the sensitive data that you've got. what type of security posture you want to operate under, and what type of regulatory compliance applies to you. So we find that the 80-20 rule is a good guideline. So 80% of your workloads probably don't contain any sensitive data whatsoever. And so using native cloud key management and encryption is going to be good enough. But what about the 20% of workloads that do contain sensitive data, such as personally identifiable information, financial transactions, corporate IP? You'll need to apply additional controls if you want to own your digital sovereignty. So to get higher control, you could use a strategy such as bring your own key. So in this scenario, you're going to generate your keys outside of the cloud. You'll typically store them in a hardware security module. You can manage those keys outside of the cloud, but at some point, you're going to have to bring them into the cloud key store. And it's that act of copying the keys in the cloud that potentially leaves you exposed, because you can't guarantee that at some point in the future, your CSP might be compelled to hand over those keys under the subpoena threat. So to get higher control, you might want to adopt a hold your own key model. In this scenario, the keys are never stored in the cloud. And the fact is that Google Cloud has a support for hold your own key, which is called Google Cloud EKM, or external key management. And it's quite unique today under all major public cloud providers because it has extensive support for hold your own key amongst 10 Google Cloud Platform services. And Thales has an integration with Google Cloud EKM. Now, in some countries or some industries, you still can't move sensitive data into the cloud unless you actually encrypt it beforehand. So we call this bring your own encryption. And in June this year, the European Data Protection Board published a report providing guidance to the recent Schrems II ruling. And in that report, they highlighted external key management and external encryption as two valid techniques for helping you to take control of your digital sovereignty before you move the workload to the cloud. So Thales can help you gain control of your digital sovereignty using the CipherTrust data security platform. We operate a model called Discover, Protect, Control, and Monitor. If you want to protect your sensitive data, you first need to know where it is. And in the recent Thales Data Security Threat Report, we interviewed 2,600 IT security professionals. One of the questions we asked them is, does your organization know where its sensitive data is? And 76% of the respondents said they did not fully know where all their sensitive data was. But you could use Thales CipherTrust to actually search your data stores. You can actually ask it to compare the data it finds against a number of well-known regulatory compliance laws, such as GDPR, PCI DSS, or HIPAA. Having found data that matches, it can then associate a risk score. What is the risk of that data being exposed? And then it can recommend how you might remediate the risk using a manual process or remediate automatically. Remediation is typically done through encryption. And this isn't the encryption that happens within the cloud. This is encryption that happens above the disk level. So you might want to encrypt the files, or you might want to encrypt a database or specific fields in the database. Really, you're trying to take back control to ensure only the rightful people or processes can access your data in clear. And having encrypted your data, you'll want to store your keys externally to the cloud and consolidate them in your central database. If you want to deploy the Thales CipherTrust data security platform, you've got a number of options. So you can deploy a hardware appliance, you can deploy a VM software appliance and put it in the cloud, or you could subscribe to services that we're putting in Google Cloud Marketplace. So Thales has a solution for Google Cloud EKM available called the CipherTrust Key Broker, and that's available in Marketplace today. So you might already be on a journey into cloud, or you might be thinking about it. And there are a number of approaches that you could take, and here is just a subset of them. It's not an exhaustive list. If you want to go fast to cloud, it's quite common for organizations to rehost. So this is lifting and shifting, typically VM images, and you put them as is straight into the cloud. You might have an application where some elements of that application need to be written for the cloud as microservices, and we call this re-architecting. Or you might want to take a legacy application and completely rewrite it so that it is fully cloud native. Effectively, you're rebuilding it from scratch. Or you might want to retire a legacy on-prem application and just consume that service as a SaaS offering. Now, the great thing is Thales with Google Cloud can help you control your digital sovereignty, whichever strategy you're using. So now I'd like to talk about some joint customer success stories that we've had together with Google Cloud. And the first is a customer who manufactures telecoms equipment, a large multinational organization. And they decided that they wanted to close down some of their less efficient data centers. And in doing so, they decided they would need to move a number of workloads to GCP. This involved, in the first instance, 470 VMs. So here we're running GCP as infrastructure as a service. But the internal compliance team said because of the sensitive data involved, those workloads would need to be encrypted beforehand. So the customer decided to use VMware vSAN encryption, and the encryption keys were generated and stored in a Thales external hardware security module. Because Google Cloud has no access to the keys or the data in clear, the customer is able to demonstrate to its internal compliance team a strong separation of duties. Our second customer case story is a large multinational pharmaceutical supplier with offices both in the US and in Europe. Now, this customer operates a hybrid multi-cloud environment. So they're running GCP and some other public clouds as well. They wanted to move a lot of VMs into GCP, but they wanted to retain the portability of those VMs. And that's exactly what GCVE does within Google Cloud. They needed to make sure the sensitive data was protected. And as well as rewriting an application for the ERP system, they also wanted to re-architect certain elements of their data warehouse. So they decided they were going to use BigQuery. So in the end, the customer decided to work with Thales. And the thing I like about this particular case story is it covers a number of the use cases. So the VMs were typically encrypted beforehand. So this is bring your own encryption. They also decided to encrypt a number of databases. This company is using SAP HANA. In rewriting some of the elements of their data warehouse, they're going to be using the Google Cloud EKM function, which is supported using Thales support for Google EKM. And also, this not only protects BigQuery, but it's also able to protect GCVE. So the VMs that are ported using that platform are also additionally protected. And I think this use case really goes to show that there is no one size fits all to moving your workloads into the cloud. It very much depends on risk. It very much depends on the nature of the workload that you're operating. But the great thing is that the Cypher Trust platform can support all of these use cases. Our next customer success story is a leading national bank in Central Europe. Now, this bank decided that it wanted to compete more strongly against the local banking institutes, and it decided to go fully cloud native. So it's rewritten its core banking application for GCP. But in this country, there are also very strong data privacy laws. And so normally you would not be able to move sensitive data into the cloud. So to demonstrate a separation of duty, this customer worked with Thales to ensure that its keys were exported outside of GCP and managed in a Thales hardware security module, the type of hardware security module that the majority of the world's banks use today and that are also commonly used in government applications. They then worked with Thales to create a bespoke key management solution. And in doing so, all of the sensitive data in the keys are isolated from GCP. But the customer is able still to leverage the benefits of the native cloud services that GCP offers. And so I like this use case because it really demonstrates that it is possible to get the best of both worlds. You can move your sensitive workloads to the cloud, but you can also retain control of your digital sovereignty. Our final use case is a industrial manufacturer of chemicals based in Europe. So like all of us, I think they've had people working from home or working remotely in distributed environments. And as a result of that, this customer is heavily invested in Google Workspace to help its productivity and collaboration. This particular customer, though, manufactures chemicals which are imported into many countries around the world, including the US. And some of these chemicals potentially have dual use, which means that they could be used for military purposes. And therefore, regulations such as EAR and ITAR, which are designed to prevent the unauthorized import of weapons and materials that could be used for warfare into the US, come into force. So this particular customer is very concerned to make sure that it's showing best practice in protecting sensitive data that its employees are using and that may be stored in documents and spreadsheets. With Google Workspace client-side encryption, all of your sensitive data is actually encrypted within the Chrome browser. You can use Thales key management to ensure that the keys are managed externally. And part of this solution also requires an identity provider. So you need to make sure that the keys that you hand over are for the rightful person with the rightful permissions. And Thales is unique as an ISV in the sense that we're the only provider of both a solution for Workspace CSE and an identity provider providing strong authentication. So just to summarize today's session, the key takeaways. I think first and foremost, make sure that you take control of your digital sovereignty and bake it into your migration to cloud early on. And to do that, you need to know where your sensitive data is. So locate and classify your sensitive data, understand how you're going to handle it, understand how you want to remediate risk. Typically, you're going to remediate risk by applying an appropriate level of encryption above the disk level. You don't just rely on cloud-based encryption if you have a sensitive workload. And finally, make sure your keys are managed external to the cloud and consolidate them in one place. Get that single pane of glass that gives you full visibility and control over who can access the keys to your sensitive data. And finally, you can deploy Thales CipherTrust in many ways, both as an appliance, hardware or VM, or increasingly, we'd like you to go to Google Marketplace and subscribe to the Thales solutions that we are posting there. The first one of which is CipherTrust Keybroker for Google Cloud EKM. So on behalf of Rob and myself, we'd like to thank you very much for listening. Directly after this presentation, you should receive an email from the Google Cloud team, and that will have links into various assets, including this presentation, and contact details from Google and Thales, should you wish to discuss your digital sovereignty requirements further. So on that point, we'd be very happy to answer any questions that you may have.